I'm sure I hit record. I'm sure I hit. Your pitch, your product, your service, you as a salesperson are weak. Here's a 50% discount. That's massive. I asked you to share with me your worst sales stories. Boy, did you not disappoint. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Sales Circle podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. We are flying through the year, we're flying through the season, we're flying through the episodes, and I want to say a massive thank you to you for tuning in. As a reminder, the Sales Circle podcast is designed to be the Sales Circle. Well, it is designed to be the Sales Circle, but it's also designed to be the sales podcast that helps you build and develop your sales skills. Now, one thing I want to make really clear: the podcast isn't a sales training session, okay? We will talk about sales. I will share some good, I will share some bad, I will share some ugly, I'll share some skills, some mindset, and everything else in between. But what I won't do is I won't go into a full in-depth training. I'm your host, Rob Spence. I'm an internationally renowned sales trainer, sales author, the deliverer of sales training courses, the MD, the managing director of an incredible sales and marketing agency called Paragon Sales Solutions. And if you're watching on YouTube, the reason I'm pointing is because my office is just over there. So that's why I point. Welcome to this week's episode. We're sharing your worst sales stories, your sales nightmares that have occurred, because we talk a lot on the podcast about what we should do, how we should act, how we should feel, how we should question, and everything else in between. But actually, I think what we should also start to consider is, what shouldn't we do? What can we learn from? What can we do differently to ensure that we good salespeople don't become like bad? So today's episode, I'm going to be sharing with you a variety of stories from you, the listener, that have sent these in. And of course, I'll be sharing some stories that I've got to share, and we'll be looking at the key takeaways, the things that we can learn most. So before we crack on with the episode, I am just going to run off mic in a second just to make sure I'm recording on the microphone, because in my head I'm panicking. I didn't hit that record button. But before you go anywhere, hit that follow button wherever you're listening on podcasts, whether it be Spotify, Amazon podcasts, or Apple Podcasts. And please also make sure that you are following us and subscribing to us over on YouTube. So without further ado, I'm going to run away for a second and let's get on with the episode. So look, like many people, I've had a bad run-in with some bad salespeople. And for me, I could sit here probably for hours and share with you some bad examples of bad salespeople that I've come face to face with. I'm going to share with you one story that really stands out, and I've wrote about this in some of the books that I've written. But I'm also going to maybe share a recent one as well. Now, as I said earlier, look, there's a lot we should do differently as salespeople to enhance our reputation, to get our reputation back to the good, right? To make our reputation so much better. And as I mentioned earlier, if we can learn from the bad, if we can learn from the mistakes of others, then we become so much better. Now, for me, I'm going to share two really simple stories, right? One was down to a salesperson really handling objections wrongly and really poorly and not reading the room. Another story is quite a recent story, and although I've got a lot of praise for the salesperson approached the sale in the complete wrong way, which didn't allow him to then continue that conversation. I'm going to share with you the first story. Now, this one really stands out. I want to take you back, goodness, a long time, 13, 14 years, give or take. At the time, I was recently married, believe it or not. My little boy was with us, and full transparency, at the time, disposable income was non-existent. I was working as a waitress in a cocktail bar. I wasn't. I was working as a warehouse manager, operations manager within a warehouse. We'd just taken on our first home. We just got a little baby boy. We didn't have much money. Disposable income was non-existent to some degree. And we were sort of living life, not on the poverty line, but, comfortable but not comfortable, should we say. One day we decided, more so my wife than I, decided that we needed a new sofa. So we went to that famous sofa shop that's always having a sale. You know the one. Sounds a bit like PFS, but isn't. And look, they're renowned for having the most sleaziest salespeople. I'm sorry, DFS. PFS. Sorry. You do. And listen, when you need some good sales training, let me know, and I'll skyrocket your sales within next to no time. But it's funny. The second you walk in, right? Second you walk in, I don't know. The one near us, right? So you walk in, there's this mezzanine floor above you. So you walk in, you got all these sofas, chairs, that kind of thing around you, right? And as you walk in, on the mezzanine, it's a mixture between vultures circling, waiting for their next target, but also like a taxi rank of taxis outside an airport. You see this row. There must have been 6 or 7 salespeople up there, all just, hanging over the edge. The second we walk in, boom, the one closest to the stairs walks down, and straight away you go, oh, for God's sake, here we go. Comes over, introduces himself. I say, listen, mate, look, really appreciate you wanting to help us. We're just browsing, we're looking. If we need you, we'll come and find you. It's like, yeah, not a problem at all. Fully understand. Yeah, I'll leave you fully alone. And whilst we're walking around this shop, he was literally just following us, right? We'd be there, and he'd be at the kind of next setup to us, the one that we've just been to, and he'd follow suit, right? So that was putting my back up anyway. And I was just like, God's sake, man, just leave us alone. Anyway, we find a sofa that we liked. It was comfortable, fit, and it was a really nice one. And of course, quite expensive. And I remember, we sat down, we called him over and said, look, we're quite interested in this. How does it all work? I see you got some finance options. How does that all work? Blah, blah, blah. And he was sat there, he was on a device, can't remember what kind of device it was. He was working it all out. And I remember he said the price as to what the monthly payments would be. Now, I can't remember what those payments were, but I remember in my head, I thought, oh, goodness, if we can't afford that, can we justify that? And I gave him a price objection. So I said this price objection to the salesperson. And this salesperson went straight away, what? You can't even afford that per month? And that straight away got my back up, and I was furious. I may have swore at him, and I walked out of that shop. Now, this is the thing with objections. There's a lot we can learn from this story. Look, everyone will object to a sale for whatever reason they are. As a salesperson, that's not up for you to judge. That's not up for you to question. That's not up for you to second guess. We know that when we're handling objections, we should show empathy. We should listen. We should try and find solutions to that problem. What we shouldn't do is laugh at a prospect or make that prospect feel belittled, nor should we question the importance of that objection to that individual, right? So that was one story that really stands out. Another one was quite recent, and I know I've shared this on the podcast quite recently. We had a salesperson turn up at the door out of the blue. So I've got to credit him. I've got to credit the cold calling hustle, especially the door-to-door cold calling hustle. Turns up, talks about this incredible alarm system. He slags off the alarm system we've got, and he talks about his alarm system. Now, I wasn't there, but from the story that I was told, he just talked and talked and talked about the features, right? And then he said, listen, when your boss is back, tell him to give me a ring. I never did. And the funny thing is, that salesperson never followed up with me, never got back in touch, never sent me an email, telephone call, nothing. So once again, if we think about those 7 to 12 touch points, building trust, relationship, that person didn't. So although I credit this salesperson for having the guts, the guile, and the confidence and the ability to go on cold call, in particular door to door, the person missed a trick, because from my knowledge, and when I questioned my team on this, that person never asked. He never used questions about our pain points. Little did that person know, and maybe with a bit of research he would have known because it was quite heavily publicised, that person would have found out that we were burgled probably 6 months prior to him turning up. He would have also seen and heard that we are right now in a bit of a high crime surge. Those gangs that go around village to village doing what they need to do, right? We're targeting council at the time. Cars were being stolen, shops were being done over. There was even a full-on armed robbery just down the road, dare I say. We live in a lovely area, I just want to make clear. And if that person had opened up with those questions, with those stories, with that quizzical, intention, that person would have uncovered our pain points, maybe elevated our desires somewhat, and allowed that conversation to go on. So that second story, I think out of the two, for me, that first one is horrendous. It's worse. Listen, it's something that happened 14, 15 years ago, and I remember it. I can see it clearly ingrained in my mind. The second story shows that actually if that person had questioned more, had listened more, had prospected a bit better, then we may not have bought from him, but he would have allowed that conversation to lead on. Now, all of these stories that I'm about to share do matter, right? Salesforce have gone out to say that 91% of customers say a positive experience makes them more likely to buy again. But 58% say one bad experience is enough to walk away. So I want you to really think about how actually sales sometimes isn't, about what you say, about how you sell things. It's actually how you make people feel. And if we know that 91% of people were going to buy from us again from a positive experience, so let's extend that out to recommendations, referrals, repeat business, and everything else in between. But 58% say they'll walk away if their experience is bad. So let's get into the stories. So for those of you that have sent these in, we're going to read them out one by one. I'm not going to mention any names to who's mentioned the stories, but I really appreciate you taking the time. You know who you are. So story number one, this person goes on saying, all I've done is copy and pasted what they've said. So apologies if there's any discrepancies here. It's very rare I'll make a purchase decision after just one chat. Even if I've done my research, I still like to sleep on it. What puts me off instantly is being pushed. The moment someone uses urgency or pricing pressure, like sign now or it's 50% more, I back off completely. It's manipulative and it shows me I can't trust you. Listen, I fully agree. I think there is always, to some degree, a need. We know that through the powers of persuasion, that some form of scarcity, some form of urgency can help a decision-making process. But actually, if that urgency is faked, is forced, or is too pushy, it looks desperate. Please don't leave me. Please spend time with me. Please, sir, please. It just overrides respect, in my opinion, right? For me, if you have so much trust and faith in your product, in your service, in your business, and you yourself, you can allow your prospect to walk out of your showroom. You can allow your prospect to go and look at other things, right? I'm going to say that right now, and I'm looking straight down the camera at you. If you're too shy and too scared to let your prospect leave your showroom, leave that meeting and thinking about it, your pitch, your product, your service, you as a salesperson are weak. If you're so good at selling, if your product's so good, you will allow your prospect to go and speak to 10 other competitors. You will allow that because you know that your thing is the best and they're going to come back to you, right? So absolutely, I know that it's happened to me. Sometimes you feel pressured. And we spoke about on the podcast previously about the tennis ball theory. If you throw things too hard at someone's face, then they're going to back away, right? Story number 2 says, I do run limited offers, but they last a week or two. If your offer holds value, if someone acts instantly, that's when you are actually selling. Clients deserve time to consider. The right buyers will come back when the time is right. Absolutely. I think that kind of absolutely nails hits the nail on the head in terms of what I just said previously. If you are so good, if what you're selling is amazing, if your offer is right, you can allow people 6 months and they'll come back to you, right? Here we go. Story 3. A sales rep pitched me a PR placement in a business magazine. Okay, yeah, we get a lot of these, especially in Leicester. Goodness, we all know the one. I liked it, but the price was out of budget. When I said that, this has happened to me. When I said that, he suddenly offered 50% off. And that just made me question the whole thing. Was I nearly overpaying by double? Then came the pushy tone. No real questions, just pressure. It was a deal breaker. I love that. It's a classic price panic, right? Remember, when we as salespeople are trying to sell something, what we sell shouldn't necessarily be brought on the price. It should be brought on the value and what you can get from that, right? You look at the car market. I can buy a car for, I don't know, 200 grand that does the same thing as a 40 grand car, a 30 grand car. Tiffany release that, silver paperclip worth, hundreds or thousands of pounds, right? I get the same thing. If someone offers a discount straight away, alarm bells are ringing. A, it's desperation. But secondly, if you're willing to go that low originally, why have you just tried to rip me off? Why have you just tried to extortion, for those kind of PR placements, 50% off, probably 250 quid, right? In particular, when it is a 50% discount, that's massive. I sometimes get it when it's 5, 10%, I do understand it. To some degree, it's the nature of the game. But it just destroys that trust. It destroys the relationship straight away. And it goes back, we talk a lot on the podcast about how sales should never be about you as a person or as a salesperson. Sales should be about selling the right solution to the right person. And in that situation, I feel, and please correct me if I'm wrong, and I think you've kind of mentioned at the end of your story, that person should have asked questions in terms of, well, what are your PR goals? Who are you trying to reach? What you're trying to do with this story? What's the intention of the story? Instead of trying to push a quick 50% discount, that it shows that person understands and is wanting to help you, right? So goodness, 50% discount, that's massive. And like I say, there's some magazines, especially in Leicester, oh my God, they do it to me. This one says, when I bought my first house, I wanted a quote for new windows. Oh, not the UPVC salespeople. The guy nodded, measured, gave me a price, then slid a contract over for me to sign. I hadn't asked for that, and I said no. I don't know if any of you listening or watching this have watched White Gold over on, I don't know if it's on Netflix, but I think it was a BBC, so I assume it's on BBC iPlayer. And of course, guys and girls editing this up, make sure you watch it. It's a great program. But that follows the stories of these 80s, UPVC, White Gold, salespeople. And, although it's tongue in cheek, it does remind us. It reminds us of the Windows salespeople of old, right? And it happens all the time. And unfortunately, I think with these people, they are dealing with generational sales training. They were taught how to sell in the 70s and 80s by, a sales manager or a business owner. That person's then taught the next generation. That person's then taught the next generation. So they're just picking up these bad habits. I mean, look, to some degree, you can't blame the hustle, right? Salespeople have got to sell. But at the same time, if you're looking for a quote and then that person's trying to punch you in the face straight away with a contract, no, it's not what we do. We provide the quote and say, listen, I know you're only looking at the minute. Should I give you a call in a few days just to see if, what we can do for you? Hey, listen, once again, if I was so confident in my product or service, I'd say, look, here's my quote. I recommend you call these companies. These are my competitors. Give them a call, see what you get. Let me know. What a great trust building exercise that is, right? Once again, it's not needy. Jesus. The cocky cold caller, I've labeled this one. I once chatted to a very confident cold caller. When I met, I know who sent this letter in as well. I think I can say he's going to be a guest on the podcast. Or actually, by the time this goes out, he probably has been a guest. But I once chatted to a very confident cold caller. When I mentioned the sales trainer I thought he must follow, he laughed and said, who? He learns from me. Yeah, no thanks. Yeah, look, I mean, confidence is good, but arrogance is deadly, right? And although sometimes that kind of thing could be taken tongue in cheek, some salespeople are very cocky, very arrogant, overconfident, and, these people some of them have got egos bigger than life itself, right? So yeah, I mean, look, again, in that situation, you got to remember you're trying to build a relationship. You're trying to build trust. You're not auditioning for Dragon's Den or The Apprentice. So look, some great stories there. And again, look, this is not the end of this segment. Maybe we include this as part of a weekly part of the show alongside our listeners' questions. If you do have a bad story, or if you've got a bad story to tell or a bad experience, write them in. All you got to do is email me, thesalescircleofficial@gmail.com. Or, contact me on LinkedIn, or just, find us on social media and send in there. So what can we learn from some of those stories? What can we take away from those stories? Look, although they've all come at different things, they've all got a lot in common, right? I think the number one thing is, within all of them, there's a lack of respect for the buyer's pace. Buyers will buy at the time that they want to buy. Remember the analogy, the best way to catch a cat is to offer, not to run after and chase. If you run after and chase a cat, you end up pushing away, right? A buyer will buy at their own pace. It's not our job as a salesperson to hit that accelerator. It's not our job as a salesperson to hit the brake. It's our job to act as the sat-nav. Let's use that analogy. Our job is a sat-nav, trying to guide and trying to direct. The driver still has full control. The driver still has, free will and can drive wherever they want. But our job is to be the sat-nav. We should never force urgency over value, right? Again, buyers will buy because they see the value, they see the benefits, they see the what's in it for me. Our job is not to push people too far too soon. Again, we should never sell as salespeople for our sake, right? Whether we've got a sales manager, a sales director, or business goals breathing down our neck, right? We are solving problems. the right customer will come along for a right product or service, right? Just remember, someone once upon a time invented the pool noodle, right? You know those floats in the swimming pool, you know, like that big, whatever, made of polystyrene. Someone once sat there and went, "Do you know what'd be a good business idea? I'm going to invent a pool noodle, and it's gonna help people float." Someone once thought of that idea, and you can't bloody escape the things, right? There will always be the right customer for your product or service. It's your job to guide, advise, and sell the value. And remember, for me, and I bark on about this a lot, and a lot of people, especially in the sales training world, don't get it. And I think we're slowly getting there. It doesn't matter what manipulative techniques you've got. It doesn't matter what objection handling techniques you have. It doesn't matter, you know, how you prospect. It doesn't matter how you overcome objections. It doesn't matter how you close. The the overruling arc, is that the term? Should be that trust and relationships far outweigh anything in sales. If we build those relationships, if we build that trust, the close happens naturally. So again, listen, some great stories there. Would love to hear more. If you do have any stories you want to share, or if you want to have any questions, then just simply write in, drop a comment. I love to read them out. Now, before we wrap up, I suppose I should do a book recommendation of the week. Now, I haven't picked a book, which is a bit annoying. And to some degree, to prove a point, it's going to work well. Because, as I said in last week's episode, people think that this is fake. It's real, people. This is real. I'll tell you what, I've just seen a book there. Where's it gone? Now, if you looked at last week's episode, you saw like a bumper episode where I shared 10 of my best sales books. And one of them was a book called Who Moved My Cheese by the guys who do a lot of the 1 minute series. So the 1 minute salesperson, the 1 minute business people person or whatever. And I'm going to share with you the 1 minute salesperson simply because A, I saw it, but B, it's a great book. If you've never read any of the 1 minute, series or anything by Spencer Johnson, I think sometimes there's another author. This one's got Larry Wilson, but sometimes, is it someone called Ken? I don't know. Anyway, the great thing about these books is they're never too in-depth, right? They are called the 1 minute something for a reason. The idea is, you could probably digest this. You could digest that, I don't know, an hour, couple of hours by the seaside, by the beach, in front of the fire, whatever. So they're always great. And I've literally, as I was flicking through, I've not done this on purpose. I found a quote that I want to share with you that really elevates and highlights what we've spoken about today. So the book goes on to say, or the blurb says, blah, 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 blah. This book shows you how to sell your ideas, products, or services successfully. In these changing times, Spencer Johnson, co-author of The 1 Minute Manager, showed you how the phenomenal 1 minute methods can bring real and lasting sales success with the least amount of, time and effort. You'll learn how to enjoy your job and your life more as you discover the effective secrets of self-management, the integrity of selling on purpose, and the liberating, wonderful paradox of helping you get others get what they want so you can get what you need. Now, as I was flicking through, a quote came up here, and this quote really, really amplifies everything that I believe in and what we're speaking about in the podcast. It says, people don't buy our services, products, or ideas. They buy how they imagine using them will make them feel. If we haven't got enough clips for social media, we definitely need to clip that up because that quote is gold dust. So as always, we will drop a link to this book in the show notes below or in the video description. If you want to grab yourselves a copy of this, hit that link below. And that wraps us up for another episode of the Sales Circle podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. We are flying through these episodes at the minute, and we're on track to have an episode out every single Thursday, ready for you right up the way till Christmas. So please just do me a favor, hit that follow button, make sure you head on over to YouTube and subscribe. And listen, why don't you share this episode on LinkedIn? Why don't you share it with 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 of your peers? Share it with people that you think need to hear it. Even better, if you've had a bad sales experience, send this clip on to them. Thank you so much for tuning in. I look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Until then, all the best. Nice. And that's it for another episode of the Sales Circle. Make sure you hit that follow button, join us over on social media, and we'll see you next week.